working as a Tagore National Fellow, which is the highest award given to an Indian scholar. And it's not only me who got it this year, there are quite a few of us, but it's an honor to us at the same time. And I will speak in English, I'm sorry, I cannot speak Serbian, but if you all have any questions, you can ask them. I think they can interpret a bit of that. And I have written quite a few of the books. My present work is on Rabindranath Tagore, as you would understand, and specifically Rabindranath Tagore in Serbia. So that's the main work I'm doing now, and I am on leave from the university job now. Yes, so that's all. I wouldn't like to say anything more about myself. You can find it on the net. Yes.
Thank you very much. Maybe we can sit, it will be more comfortable, and you can start your lecture, or if you prefer standing, it's up to you. I don't know how.
Yeah. But am I audible? Yes? Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
If you need microphone, you can tell me, but usually it's okay without microphone in this room.
I'm fine. If people can hear, I'm okay. So I wouldn't like to bore you all with too many things, but and the proposition about what I'm talking about is there already, you all know. So I wouldn't like to go into all those things, but I will explain what I'm trying to do. And yes, what is most important as far as Rabindranath Tagore is concerned, whether in Serbia or across the world or in India, his position as a Nobel laureate became, yes, it earned him international stature. It gave him the international stage. But there was a whole lot of debates later. I'm not going into debates because the debate did not affect Serbia. This is something very, very unique. Serbia remained as it was, and Serbia received Rabindranath as an Indian poet. That's all about it. And I think the Serbian reception was fantastic. They could understand that Rabindranath was creating a space of aesthetic, ethical togetherness that ensures allegiance to human ties and has the potential to transcend ideological and geopolitical borders. And this speaks that Tagore could move beyond the frameworks of power and versus powerlessness. Everybody could be powerful if one thinks that he or she can be powerful. That inner strength is always there within us. It's just that we forget that and we get tuned to what is happening outside and we try to react to that, and that creates the violence. This song is actually about that, and that was being played, and Victor has requested me to read the Bangla poem, the Bengali language, which is Tagore's language and my language too. I am from the same state of Rabindranath Tagore. But do you think I should read? Victor has requested, so maybe I'll read a few lines, but it will not make any sense. I'm not Rabindranath Tagore.
Ja sam nju zamolio da pročitam na originalnom bengali jeziku na kome je Tagore pisao svoju poeziju. Naravno, ona će čitati prevode koje je sam Tagore uradio, ali razlog zašto sam ja nju to zamolio, zato što je sam Tagore, kada je bio u Beogradu, čitao beogradskoj publici dela na svom jeziku. I zato sam želeo da, kao znak sećanja na Tagoru, i zamolio sam je da zapravo ponovo pročita na originalnom jeziku tu poeziju. I'm explaining why I have asked you to read in
No,
original.
no, you are free to ask. I can
And I
read
think
it.
now
That's
they will
not
agree and they will support my view.
Okay. I would love to, yes. But this poem which I'm reading and which has been rendered into music by Rabindranath Tagore himself, and he has put it into English himself. So the translation is Rabindranath's. So I will come to that later. Let me read the Bangla first. হিংসায় উন্মত্ত পৃথিবী নিত্য নিঠুর দ্বন্দ্ব ঘোর কুটিল পন্থ তার লোভ জটিল বন্ধ নূতন তব জন্ম লাগি কাতর যত প্রাণী কর ত্রাণ মহাপ্রাণ আনো অমৃত বাণী বিকশিত কর প্রেম পদ্ম চির মধু নিষন্দ শান্ত হে মুক্ত হে হে অনন্ত পুণ্য করুণা ঘন ধরণী তল কর কলঙ্ক শূন্য. So the English rendition is like this. The world today is wild with the delirium of hatred. The conflicts are cruel and unceasing in anguish. Crooked are its paths, tangled its bonds of greed. All creatures are crying for a new birth of thine. O thou of boundless life, save them, rouse thy eternal voice of hope. Let love's lotus with its inexhaustible treasury of honey open its petal in thy light. O serene, O free, in thine immeasurable mercy and goodness, wipe away all dark stains from the heart of this earth. So this is a part of the thing. I'm going to the Bangla again. এসো দানবীর দাও ত্যাগ কঠিন দীক্ষা মহাভিক্ষু লও সবার অহংকার ভিক্ষা লোক লোক ভুলুক শোক খণ্ডন কর মোহ উজ্জ্বল হোক জ্ঞান সূর্য উদয় সমরহ প্রাণ লোভুক সকল ভুবন নয়ন লোভুক অন্ধ শান্ত হে মুক্ত হে হে অনন্ত পুণ্য করুণা ঘন ধরণী তল কর কলঙ্ক শূন্য ক্রন্দনময় নিখিল হৃদয় তাপ দহনী দীপ্ত বিষয় বিষয় বিকার জীর্ণ ক্ষীণ অপরিতৃপ্ত দেশে দেশে পড়িল তিলক রক্ত কলুষ গ্লানি তব মঙ্গল শঙ্খ আলো তব দক্ষিণ পানি তব শুভ সঙ্গীত রাগ তব সুন্দর ছন্দ শান্ত হে মুক্ত হে হে অনন্ত পুণ্য করুণা ঘন ধরণী তল কর কলঙ্ক শূন্য. Thou, giver of immortal gifts, give us the power of renunciation and claim from us our pride. In the splendor of a new sunrise of wisdom, let the blind gain their sight, and let life come to the souls that are dead. O serene, O free, in thine immeasurable mercy and goodness, wipe away all dark stains from the heart of this earth. Man's heart is anguished with the fever of unrest, with the poison of self-seeking, with a thirst that knows no end. Countries far and wide flaunt on their foreheads the black-red marks of hatred. Touch them with thy right hand. Make them one in spirit. Bring harmony into their life. Bring rhythm of beauty. O serene, O free, in thine immeasurable mercy and goodness, wipe away all dark stains from, from the heart of this earth. So this is a poem which was written by Rabindranath Tagore in 1927, almost immediately after he returned to his Shantiniketan, the abode of peace as it is called, after his longest European tour. And it was a very, very hectic tour, and it was not only hectic physically, he had to bear a lot of mental torture, and I believe you all know the Mussolini thing. So he was unwell, and he stayed in Hungary for a few days, and he took rest there, and then he came to Belgrade. And in Belgrade, of course, he was very happy. The reception was magnanimous, and we have accounts from the Indian counterpart, who, like the statistician Prashant Mahalanamish and his wife, they were accompanying him to this tour, and Mrs. Mahalanamish has given a very, very enthusiastic and bright account of Tagore's reception in 1926. It's already there, and I believe you all know, and I have given lectures on that so many times I would not like to go back to that. But if you all have any questions, yes, I'm ready to answer. But about this poem, I must say that this is a poem, as I said, it was written on the 5th of March 1927, so you can understand almost after he completed the 5th European tour, which was the longest tour. And he was deeply afflicted by seeing the devastation of Europe. He was truly sad, and this was a poem he wrote as a sort of prayer to Buddha. It's addressed to Buddha, seeking the oneness that is already there in the Upanishadic principles, where the home and the world are overlapping. They are not separate, and so. But that inner-outer interaction needs to be. I cannot feel it. Perhaps many of us cannot feel it. It's only the genius, the talented persons who can actually feel that oneness, which is there in the scriptural Upanishadic tradition, and Buddha, of course, stands for compassion and love. So taken together, this poem is an alternative to the violence, to the devastation, to the human and material waste that Tagore saw in Europe. And I'm actually not talking about Serbia in this regard. But it's relevant even today, we know it, and I wouldn't like to say more about it. And yes, as Krishna Kripalini, the biographer, one of his early biographers, who has written, he is not only the biographer of Rabindranath Tagore, he's also the biographer of Mahatma Gandhi. So I always take Krishna Kripalini's words because it's very balanced. And he says that while traveling the layered contours of Europe, in the words of his biographer, Krishna Kripalini, the poet experienced the interlaced tensions between two worlds, that of the East and the West. Most importantly, he witnessed the devastations of the modern European civilization and the aftermath of the First World War. This experience unambiguously and unquestionably affected the deepest core of the poet with the world mind. And this poem, yes, That so we see that if you return to those days of his tour, European tour, we see that he was relentlessly writing against violence, and it was not that he was speaking about violence. He was actually seeking alternative ways how we can think otherwise, how to create a different outlook in the world that would bring peace. And war would always be there in ourselves also. War is not only about one nation fighting with another. We have a war inside, and we have to get rid of that war first, and then only we can speak big things. So I have not overcome that, and this Ahimsa book is about this, which has recently got published, and Victor has also contributed in this book. This is an edited volume which has come out very recently. Of course, there was a previous version to it, but that was a messed up version, I would say, because it was full of mistakes. Each page had at least 50 to 60 mistakes. So I proofread it at least 5-6 times, and now it has taken some shape. And as you can see, the name of the book is Ahimsa, Tagore and Gandhi. So at the outset, I would like to say, yes, and this is a production of Tagore Center, Serbia, which is in Zrenjanin. So if you all want to visit the center, you all can go there. I'm one of the directors, and Alexandra Marksic, who is the primary director, I would say, because she is located here. I just see the academic sides. Yes, so it's the Ahimsa which brought the sense of Ahimsa that speaks of oneness in its ethical and moral sense. For Gandhi, we cannot say it's aesthetic also, but for Tagore, it's also the aesthetics. So it's the sense of oneness in Ahimsa that brought Tagore and Gandhi together, in spite of the differences they had. They had severe differences, but those were, I would say, very personal, but respectful. Both of them were respectful towards each other. And I have written everything, you all can read it, I wouldn't like to repeat. But it's relating to the poem, I must say that, as Krishna Kripalini says, that there was no two great persons in India during that time who believed in the oneness and the compassion and love of Buddha. And Rabindranath Tagore actually saw the Mahatma in Gandhi, and it was he who contemporarized Gandhi as the Mahatma. And before that, his elder brother, Dvijendranath Tagore, who is again a very renowned philosopher, Rabindranath Tagore's eldest brother, philosopher, poet, musician. Rabindranath comes from a very, very rich cultural family. Rich means culturally rich family. They brought the Renaissance to Bengal and India. So India today owes a lot to that family. What India is today culturally is, if not 100%, 80% due to the Tagore family. And both Tagore and Gandhi believed in the oneness, in peace. And peace wouldn't come like that. And we know that Gandhi was at the helm of the non-cooperation movement, and which actually invited a lot of violence. He did not see that. And Rabindranath had asked him, please, try to understand. And they had several conversations. One would like to say dialogue, some would say debate, some would say conversation, whatever. They had interacted a lot, and ultimately Gandhi said that I thought I had many differences with Gurudev, as he used to call Tagore, but ultimately I saw there was no conflict. So that was the reverence they had for each other. Anyway, this is not about Tagore and Gandhi debate or conversation, but yes, and it is there in the book. If you all want to read, you can take from here. I'll give a few more copies to Victor, because this is the only copy I received today, just today before coming. So I thought, let me bring it here. I'll leave a few more copies to Victor, so if you all want to read it, it's content-wise, this book is really very good. It's not because I edited it, it's because what the contributors wrote about it. It's a marvelous thing. We have very good writers here. Please read it, and Victor has also contributed. So I have moved away from reading the poem, but I think it's enough, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because, yes, I can read it, but it might take a little more time. That is what I'm worried about, because I'm given maximum of 1 year, 1 hour, and I want to finish it. But what we need to remember is that the crux of the poem, we have read the Bangla, the tune is there, it was composed by Rabindranath Tagore, and it was, perhaps, I'm not 100% sure, Rabindranath used to put the tune, and then as a poet he used to forget. It was Dinendranath Tagore, that is Dijendranath, that is Rabindranath's eldest brother's grandson, who was again a very, very talented musician, is to do the notations. So the notations that are being followed now is Dinendranath Tagore's. And this poem, Rabindranath actually had enacted. It was put in his second edition of Dance Drama, Noti Puja, that is the courtesan's worship. The worship the courtesan does to Buddha, to attain the oneness, the love, the compassion. So, and it was also put to, it was made into a film, but it did not succeed much, naturally. So, but Rabindranath was there, and yes, one thing I must mention is that all the castes were women. You can imagine India, where patriarchy is very strong. Yes, things have changed now, but during Tagore's time it was not so. But Rabindranath had pulled out those women to the stage to act. And that was truly revolutionary. And he had to bear a lot of criticisms, as usual. So, just a few lines about what he is, and I believe I'm actually very honest, and this is what I feel. This is not the first time I'm coming to Serbia. This is, I don't know how many times, maybe the 15th time. And I find Serbians very, very warm, very warm. And wherever I go, I am very well received. So this is Serbian hospitality, and I truly hope that this continues in the days to come. There are several cultural aspects. Yes, Serbia has, actually I was talking to a few of the university professors yesterday and day before yesterday that Serbia has a huge potential. We need to work, that is all. What I notice is many people do not work. We need to work hard to keep that creative spirit going on. Rather than indulging on wrong things, let us do something positive for the country. And I believe Victor is doing that. Please keep it up, Victor. I'm not trying to praise you unnecessarily, but I have seen Adigad, I think 3-4 years ago, and today I see it has changed a lot. So this cultural heritage needs to be preserved. It needs to be preserved. There are several things in India, and when it comes to Tagore, I must say that his Nobel Prize was stolen, so it's no more there. Of course, it was replaced, but that definitely not the original one. And when it comes to colonialism, you all know that even the diamond was stolen. So whatever India had was looted by the colonizers. And yet the colonizers did keep back certain things with which we had to survive. But here I must say that Tagore was one person whom Jawaharlal Nehru respected very much. That was because he never asked the Britishers to leave the country. He never asked. And that created a huge confusion. He was misunderstood. When Gandhi is saying non-cooperation, go away, quit India, Rabindranath is spreading words of peace and cooperation and negotiation. And he says that you build up your Atmashakti, the strength that you have within you and within the country. Try to build that. Don't fight. What will you gain by fighting with the Britishers? We don't have weapons. Our weapons will be our strength, inner strength. And with that, we will gain our true India. It's not my words, it's his words. So, and that is the tradition of India also. Atithi Deva Bhava. The guest comes to us as in the shape of a god. So, we cannot refuse them. They came, it's fine, let them be. Because India was ruled by many other foreign rulers. So they stayed back. Why the Britishers have to go away? Let them stay, it's fine. If they cannot stay, they will go away. But the poverty the artificial poverty that was created during colonialism made the Britishers leave. It was not that India had driven away. So that is the Indian tradition. I wouldn't like to idealize that or essentialize that, but that's the Indian tradition Rabindranath stood for all his life. And his institute, and that speaks of the oneness. The oneness is the main theme here. That speaks of the oneness. And his university, Vishwabharati, where the world makes nests in, where the world makes a single nest in that place. So all the international scholars, all the Indian scholars come together and stay there and enjoy and create freedom of education in that open atmosphere, studying under the tree, dancing, singing, doing whatever they want to do. But the Nobel laureate, we must remember, Amartya Sen, the famous economist, is from Vishwabharati. So it's not that there was no discipline, there was no studies, but there was freedom of mind with which the students could do their studies. I'm told that there is a free self-learning university which is coming up in Serbia. And I have been asked to give a talk there, but I really do not know whether I'll be able to, because this time it's very packed. My schedules are very packed. But let's see. But this seems to be in line with Tagore's idea of education, his pedagogy. It's a self-learning university. This is what they say. Self-learning. I haven't seen what it is like, so but I have been invited there. So that's it. And yes, so we have come to know till now that Tagore was definitely a poet. He was a poet primarily, and he was also a philosopher. Of course, he always said that I do not understand philosophy, but I'm not a scholar, I'm a poet. He loved to be called a poet. And poet, the kavi is the Indian word, has a very special connotation in the Indian context. Kavi is a very loose translation would be poet. Very loose translation would be poet. Kavi is somebody who is a great visionary, who has the power to see the world. It sounds a bit mystical, but it is not so. Because those who can experience that strength within, one need not be a seer or a sage and sit in the mountains. No, Tagore detested that. But he was that strong enough to get that tradition within him and transform that tradition into his active life. And we see that Vishwabharati is the university, but Shantiniketan and Sriniketan, Shantiniketan is the abode of peace and Sriniketan is the abode of grace and prosperity. So these two institutes, Shantiniketan and Sriniketan, goes by his ideas, where the rural reconstruction schemes are carried out in different ways. And you should see their handworks. So education was not only limited to these papers. Education had a very, very broad perspective for him. Very broad perspective. And Vishwabharati, of course, we know, and Shantiniketan and Sriniketan are other two projects which Tagore had established, and it is still there. And there are plenty of people working there, plenty of students who learn handicrafts, starting from handicrafts to everything, many things. It's worth seeing, actually. It's worth seeing. I could not get the pictures, I could not go to Shantiniketan this time. But if I could show those, you all would understand that how much Tagore worked for rural reconstruction. It's not only about agriculture. Yes, agriculture was another sphere. We can't imagine how much this poet worked. How much. He went to the villages and created a sense of, because during the colonial times, fear was the main factor that disallowed the peasants to work on their own. They did not understand what the sahibs were saying, what the English people were saying. And these English
English people could not be bothered about them. So there was a huge gap between the village life and the city life. And Tagore wrote a satire, Parrots Trading. The Parrots Trading, it was written, I think it was, I forgot the date, but probably 1919. There he satires just as a parrot is stuffed. In that satire he shows that the parrot is stuffed with so many papers that the parrot naturally cannot digest the papers, and the parrot dies. What is the crux of the story? The story says that these people of the countrymen, those who do not understand English, they're forced to understand English, they're forced to get education in English, and ultimately the result is nothing. They don't understand English, they don't know anything of English history, and they're forgetting their Bangla or any other Indian language. So, at every level, Tagore had worked to bring back, to resuscitate the Indian traditional conditions without neglecting modernity. And that is where I think we should understand Tagore not as a sage, but a very, very modern poet. Very modern poet who was open to everything. Whatever came on his way, he accepted with readiness. He resisted, of course, yes, he resisted. In 1919, when many of you might know about the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, it was Rabindranath Tagore sitting. Jallianwala Bagh massacre happened in Punjab. India is a huge country. It was in Amritsar, it happened in Amritsar, Punjab, in the north of India. And Tagore was in Shantiniketan, that is in the east of India, quite a distance. However, Tagore came to know about it, and he was the first one to protest. And his very, very strong letter, we have it in this book again, Bashabi Fraser has written this. Many others have written, I have also written, but in this book, Bashabi Fraser has written. And it was a very, very strong letter to Lord Chelmsford. And after that, a different phase of Tagore starts. He focuses on education. He focuses on the international sphere because he could understand that if the Britishers were to be stopped, India, it was possible that India could drive away the Britishers, but it would take a very, very violent turn, and that would have killed thousands and thousands, maybe millions of Indians, because India didn't have any weapon. Tagore traveled abroad, spreading the words of peace and non-violence and cooperation, intellectual cooperation. And it was Rolla who responded to him, and Rolla actually wrote to Tagore to sign the peace treaty, and that was in 1919. So after that, things did start to change. But colonialism is not easy. It's not easy to take. However, when it comes to the reception of the poet in Serbia, Victor, you can stop me whenever you want to, right?
I will have a couple of questions, but
now?
well, it's up to you. Maybe later if you want to finish this section.
It's up to you. I don't mind. But I think It's better I finish it.
Yeah.
Yes. So, as far as the reception of the poet in Serbia is concerned, I'm inclined to return to a professor of the English department, Belgrade University, the late Ivanka Kovacevic, who sings, maybe I'm not pronouncing it very correctly, but I'm trying, who seems to have studied Tagore quite elaborately. Because I would like to say very briefly though, but what I said a while ago, that the Serbian reception of Tagore is actually very, very strong. Strong in the sense that it has been critically analyzed, it has been seen from the angle of world literature, and as I said, the social, cultural, and ecological aspects of Tagore's writings, especially his poetry, has been studied very, very thoroughly in Serbia, which actually people do not know. The retrieval work which I did for years, people asked me, why don't you publish the book? What book? Even yesterday somebody told me that there is something else. But I'm told by somebody, some other professors in Dipannita, please draw a line now and get the book published. There's a lot of work done on Tagore, which actually is not known to us. For me, now I have everything almost 95% retrieved. Of course, the Novi Sad part, I will come to that later. But to Tagore scholarship, definitely this is not there, 100%. Victor knows a bit about it, but when I read Ivanka's comments, you will realize that perhaps you also did not know about it. It's fantastic. Yes, but before I go to Ivanka, I would, Ivanka, and of course, many others, and I will touch them briefly. I would like to mention and acknowledge at the same time that the retrieval work of Tagore in Serbia would not have been possible without the help of the individuals at the National Library, the Belgrade University Library, the SANU, and the PEN in Belgrade. The translation work is mostly done at the Department of English under the mentorship of Mirjana Danicic and Sandra Jasipovic. For overall guidance, I owe a lot to Professor Dusan Pine, Professor Jovan Pejic, and Radmila Gikic Petrovic, the wife of Professor Svetozar Petrovic, who was the first chronicler of Tagore in Serbia. Last but not the least is my heartfelt thanks to Victor Latic for inviting me to give this public lecture at his Grand Adligad Museum. I'm adding this because it has changed so much for the good at this Adligad Museum and Library. The earlier public lecture was given at the Belgrade University, though in a virtual mode. And I must acknowledge Ms. Gauri Basu, who is the director of our center, without whose initiative I wouldn't have been in Serbia this time. Okay, and I think I have covered everybody, but if I've missed anyone, please, I hope I'll be excused. The question that often comes to my mind as I revisit Tagore in Serbia is the nature of, it's a little deeper now. So please don't get bored. If you all get bored, ask me to stop. as I revisit Tagore in Serbia, I am trying to catch on the nature of oneness as the Serbian scholars and readers saw in the poet. As Ivanka observes, Tagore firmly believed that humankind would exceed the cataclysm of the destruction. She writes, and I'm quoting her, "Is it possible that the man who has learned to control the force that holds atoms together, the most powerful force in his hands, cannot restrain the destructive force in his own psyche?" She goes on to say, according to Tagore, the only indicator of civilization's values is how much it has developed love for man and how much it has given it prominence in its laws and institutions. The vibes from the words like, unquote, the vibes from the words like these that speak of the oneness cannot be measured in terms of money or any wealth or a specific time or space. Ivanka delves deeper into the interliterary communication, and while emphasizing on Tagore's faith in non-violence, unity and peace across the entire universe, she underscores that these living words remain enshrined for eternity. And I quote her, "It's because of the lack of human idols which guide human action towards positive endeavors. The dark forces of collective subconsciousness are being released. Examples of this can be seen in any war. Those who rule stir up the masses which have a well-developed instinct of self-preservation. By writing determinedly against nationalism, Tagore proved that those who ruled overemphasized danger and kindled fear in order to foster chauvinism. Those nations which indulged in control over other nations were mostly haunted by the doubt and fear. They lived in constant fear that the downtrodden would rebel, that their reign would be endangered, and that was why they had become inhuman." She adds to these tensions of fear that the twins war and naturalism nurture, and observes the frantic race for industrialization enticed the West to the path which led to self-destruction. There are signs of general collapse, which, as it seems, is not so remote. On the other hand, among the downtrodden, there is growing hostility, which is turning into black clouds of threatening storm. But Tagore firmly believed that humankind would avoid the cataclysm of the general destruction. And then she talks about what the poet believed is that the good must win, because the victory of the good, and I quote her, she writes that, because the victory of the good is inherent to the world, by being at the heart of the huge mystery which surrounds the unity of the opposites. We actually fail to understand that without the intercourse of the good and the evil, the East and the West, and whatever opposites are there, the interdependence is lost and the world cannot move. It's a very, very scientific thought, actually. There should be a male and a female for the next generation. So there should be the East and the West for the next generation. We live in the interdependent world. How can the East live without the West, and how can the West live without the East? That was Tagore's contention, and I think Ivanka has brought it out very methodically, and she has done a critical study of it. Anyway, I mentioned Ivanka at the outset because she, as I have found, that she is hardly referred to in Tagore scholarship in Serbia. The interliterary communication that she tried to develop in her readings of Tagore through the realization of the fundamental unity of oneness and without homogenizing universalism is significant. She underscores the ethical and the aesthetic consciousness in Tagore's poetry, and she refers to several poems from Gitanjali, The Fugitive, The Stray Birds, and also she refers to the essays like Personality, Creative Unity, and the Religion of Man, and shows the possibilities of living beyond conflicts in this interdependent world, and by extension, the possibilities of maintaining the East-West relationships. Interestingly, I'm skipping some portions. Interestingly, she also refers to the Brahma and insists Tagore's faith was, as he himself said, the religion of man, in which the infinite becomes defined in humanity and comes close to me to need my love and cooperation. Such humanness of Tagore's religion makes it universal, unquestionable, even to those who are far from any kind of theism. Now, one second, please. Yes. Again, we find, is it becoming a bit heavy? Yes? It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay?
So.
So you want me to, what do you want me to do? Because my work is to study the reception. Yes.
I will come here and I will ask you some questions that I think they will want to know.
Yes. And
so
then I'll come to some, even Vojislav Juric, who has studied very at length, and then Nachura,
But can you tell us in a few sentences, what were the main things that you have discovered about Tagore's stay in Serbia that have not been known before your research?
These are all retrieved works.
This is all completely new.
What I read about Ivanka, did you know?
No, I didn't know, but I don't know if others knew,
No,
if people in
no.
India knew, if...
No, it is not
so
there.
it was
It's written in
completely-
here. It's not there in Tagore studies.
So you
In
provide...
Tagore scholarship, it is not there. It's not known. And actually, even in the centenary volume, if you see, it's not there. There is from Hungary, from Bulgaria, from Poland, from many other countries, from Russia, but there is nothing from Serbia. I was astonished to see that.
But you discovered that there is actually a lot.
Yes,
That is
I
very
have
interesting.
written not even, these are the two books which are filled with materials.
That you discovered about
Tagore
Tagore's
in Serbia,
stay in Serbia.
it's about Tagore in Serbia. It is about Tagore in Serbia. My
Amazing.
project is Tagore in Serbia.
One of my questions was that Tagore is actually probably one of the most traveled Asian writers. It is very unusual for a writer to basically constantly be traveling. And I would like to ask you, what do you think was the influence of his travels, both on India and on reception of the world in India, and about how the countries where he traveled, how he brought India to those countries, and the perception of India?
How he brought India to this country, if it comes to when we are dealing with Serbia or Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavia, he was actually talking about Buddhism and Upanishads. If you go to the first lecture, you see he is actually talking about the spiritual tradition, for which he was, for this and for many other reasons, we know that despite many of the harmonious reception of Tagore, the Zenatists protested against.
This was one of my questions. Yes,
Yes.
I wanted
Yes,
to
I
ask you
wouldn't
because
like to give a jargonistic lecture because these are known to the Serbians, and why the Zenatists protested. Again, this book has something about that. But the point is, they misunderstood. They are saying that we are barber genius and we are not treasured in our own country. Who are you, poet, to come and give us knowledge? So you were not invited. Why did you come? So these were the open, plain protests by the Zenatists. I'm not disrespecting them. They were avant-garde artists. But the point is, how it's only for people
But
like you to find out why did they say that.
But isn't it very interesting that this kind of poets that are also quite prominent today, and they actually did something important for the world, the Zenatist poets, that they felt the need to publicize their feelings for nobody else but to Tagore when he is in Serbia. It is quite unusual, because if you have a writer coming from the East, why would you do that kind of a protest? So I think that they also felt that he must be somebody very important, and they wanted to be heard in a way. Of course, they chose the wrong moment and the wrong way, but it is a very interesting moment. And I didn't follow, I don't know if this kind of protest happened anywhere else on Tagore's trips, or only in Belgrade, And yet he had one of the best receptions in Belgrade, and the only protest on his trip was in Belgrade.
Yes,
Yes.
and he said that I feel like having two nests on the opposite shores. Yes, he said.
Yes, it's
You
a famous sentence. Yes.
Yeah, it's there. So these are the things that actually I thought you all know. So I did not want to, but it's there if you want me to read it or tell you all anything about that. And you have one page which is also written about that. It's from there I found it.
And one more thing that I think would be interesting to know is, what is your thought on the influence of Tagore thought on formation of non-aligned movement and things that happened after the war?
Tagore was not alive during the war.
Of course, but the influence of his philosophy, you know.
Yeah. Yes, I think it did influence, because Nehru was very much a Tagore person. And he did say that Tagore gave nationalism a very wider meaning of internationalism. Tagore's nationalism cannot be called narrow nationalism. He gave a very wide perspective to nationalism, which is internationalism. And non-aligned movement is about that. It's about the international non-violent relationship.
Yes, this is what I thought.
Yes.
I don't know if maybe we should ask them if they want to ask some
Yes,
questions.
please.
Možda neko pitanje? Nadam se da ste
You can ask in Serbian, they can put it in
ja
English.
bi vam ovo prevedem ako želite. Nemoguće, nema niko nikakvo pitanje.
Ja imam samo jednu konstataciju.
Da?
Can I have a glass of water?
Yes.
Tagora je ušao u mene u drugom gimnazije i još nije izašao. Znala sam Gravinar ceo na pamet i zaljubila se u ono koji mi je poklonio tu knjigu. Čisto da se zna, ali sam se odljubila. Tagora je ostao, ali što se ljubavi tiče, tu je završeno. Brzo.
She's saying that
Istina je sve.
when she was young, she knew Gradinar, the book.
Gardiner is, I think, it's the most is being most sold. As far as the circulation is, I was trying to check the circulation. Gardiner is mostly sold, and that is because it's there in the syllabus, high secondary syllabus. I mean, a high school syllabus.
she's saying that she knew it by heart and she fell in love with the guy who gave it to her for the first time.
Okay.
But the love is for the guy was gone, but for Gardner it stayed forever.
Okay.
So that was a comment, yes.
Very nice. Yes, Rabindranath perhaps would have loved to hear that because he was a romantic person.
Yes. So, nemate nikakvo pitanje? Dakle, ne znam da li ste razumeli, ali moje najveće iznenađenje je bilo zato što Tagore najbolji prijem imao u Beogradu, ali i najgori prijem istovremeno, zato što je grupa pesnika zenitista protestovala protiv njegovog dolaska i to je bio ovako jedan poseban skandal. Now, I would like to ask you about your opinion about Tagore visiting Novi Sad, because we worked on it together and there are very little evidence on his visit, but
Yes,
it's still a
actually
possibility.
I have written here. Yes,
So-
of course, I was depending upon what you wrote because I did not find anything new. I have searched. I have not found anything. But as I've sent you the plaque in front of the
Yes.
theatre,
Yes.
it says that Tagore came to Novi Sad and he gave a lecture, and when, that's not mentioned, and what was the lecture, that is also, of course, that much, so much is not expected in a plaque, but the point is there is no written evidence. Even as you wrote that Elena Chura had translated, one of the first translators of Tagore, isn't it?
Well, Ilana Chura's aunt, Ljubica Sazanić,
Or Ljubica? Okay.
she
okay.
met Tagore in...
No, who translated
She
Tagore?
did.
She did.
Yes.
Okay. So
She met him in
those-
Vienna and then invited him to Novi Sad.
Yes, this is what I learned from you, and I have seen, you have shown me the furniture, I have written all these things here. But there is no written document. Unfortunately, we follow the Western style of history and we are forgetting the orature, which is also history, which can be a history. History is not only about written words. History is also about orature, what comes through oral tradition. And unfortunately, those things have been lost. And those whose noses and ears were butchered, as you write in the... yes? Yes?
Yeah, they were murdered in 1942.
Yes. Their noses were cut, their ears were cut,
Yes.
and then they were dumped to the Danube River. So, papers I don't think mean anything there where human lives are lost.
Radi se o boravku Tagore u Novom Sadu, za koje nismo uspjeli da pronađemo istorijske dokumente, međutim postoji jako mnogo posrednih dokaza da je Tagore zaista bio u domu Ilane Čure u Novom Sadu, to je gost njene tetke Ljubice Sazanić, i taj namještaj iz prostorije u kojoj je Tagora održao predavanje se nalazi ovdje, uključujući stolice za koje se pretpostavlja da je Tagora na njima sedeo. Međutim, mi smo sproveli jedno istraživanje, nismo uspjeli da pronađemo ni jedan materijalni dokaz u smislu dokumenta koji bi posvjedočio o njegovom dolasku u Novi Sad, što naravno ne mora da znači da se sam taj događaj nije dogodio, zato što je ta porodica strašno stradala u raciji, svi ti ljudi su pobijeni, ta dokumenta su uništena, postoji svedočenje Ilane Čure koja se seća dok je bila dete, potpisane fotografije Tagore i još nekih stvari, tako da zapravo o tome je bilo ovo pitanje. I'm just briefly explaining the situation with Novi
Because
Sad.
reading becomes a bit tedious for the audience.
Yes.
No, it's right, yeah.
Maybe some more question? Možda još neko pitanje ili?
Pa samo da se zahvalimo na ovako divnom izlaganju.
I should like to thank you for the lecture and for coming here.
No, I could see that she was listening very carefully. She was listening very carefully. Thank you very much. No, I can understand that Tagore has a very firm grounding in Serbia.
And as I keep on saying, that I was astonished, actually astonished to see that how much Serbian students know about Tagore.
Yes, I will tell you something. For example, we have visitors from all over the world. It is extremely rare to find somebody who heard about Tagore.
Yes.
They don't know who he is. The first time they hear there is such an Indian poet as Tagore is here in Belgrade. Yeah.
Yes.
One more thing that I found astonishing, that his influence in Belgrade was so strong that even there was a person at Slavia Square, an old guy, who was dressing himself
Yes,
as Tagore.
As Tagore.
Dakle, u Beogradu posle njegovog dolaska
Yeah.
neki dedica se presvlačio kao Tagora, tako nosio bradu, stari odeću i hodao po Slavi. I naravno malo su ga smatrali otkačenim, ali je zanimljivo koliki uticaj dolazak takvog pesnika imao na naš narod.
Yes, and now we have Tagore Monument in New Belgrade, Friendship Park.
Yes.
Yes, which is a very fine location.
Yes, and that location is also connected to non-aligned movement. So this is also why the
Okay.
question. Yes, it was created during the non-aligned movement by the visits of non-aligned presidents and prime ministers.
Okay, Gandhi's statue is also
Yes.
there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they actually all planted the tree in the park, in the Friendship Park.
Okay.
So I would like to finish the lecture with reading one Tagore poem in Serbian.
No, I have a little more to say.
Okay, let's.
I'll talk very briefly, but I would like to bring to your concern, and I can give this to you, and you can edit, and if you want to get it published, you can get it published, that's fine. But what I wanted to say is, we have talked about literature and what's her name?
Ljubica Sazević,
Ljubica,
the aunt of Ilana
yes.
Čuraj,
There are several other scholars who have worked on Tagore, like Vojislav Đurić, Isidora Sikolić, who writes, he is our master. We can hear him, we can smell him. And whatever he says is so dear to us.
Amazing.
Yes, he is a humanist poet, and he's our master. And now then we have Senija Atanasijević, Jelena Dimitrović. Senija Atanasijević was a philosopher, but she was there during Tagore's reception.
And Jelena Dimitrijević went to meet him.
Yes, and Jelena, they have written a lot. I will send you, and if you can just publish it informally, and you can circulate among those who are interested. Yes, Jelena, in fact, went to India to see Tagore. She writes that my wishes are fulfilled. I have come to Shantiniketan to see Tagore. I have seen him, but my experience was both pleasant and unpleasant. Pleasant because she could meet Tagore in his most loved place, and it's unpleasant because Tagore was not in his proper frame. He was unwell. He was actually very unwell after this hectic tour, and many things happened during the tour, and he was very unwell. So that's it. There are many things, as you can see. I have written a lot, but there is one quite recent. And Jelena Dimitrijević has written a book which was published in 1928. She went to India and visited Tagore in 1927, and it was published, the letters from India. There are two letters. It's called Letters, but it's a long one, and there she narrates everything. And I was told by Biljana, who's the head of the Department of World Literature, that she has written even more. So I'm coming to know more and more about Tagore's reception. So I don't know when to end, but yes, this time I have to finish. And recently, this is the name of one of the recent critic, Miloš Milošević, who is a poet, archivist, scientist. This is what I've been told, an important intellectual Serbian voice. And in his essay, he writes that Tagore is an opponent, but what he writes is very correct. That is why I'm trying to, I don't even know who he is, but like I know who is Jovan Tejic, who is Dušan Pajić, I know who is Victor, but I don't know who is this person. But whatever he wrote is it's quite correct. Tagore is an opponent of the narrow concept of nationalism, and I'm reading this because it happened long after. I think it was written in 2010 or 2006, so it's pretty recent. Here he writes that Tagore is an opponent of the narrow concept of nationalism, particularism, and regionalism in life and poetry. He, as a citizen of the world, refuses to accept the duties to protect and represent only the interest of the country he belongs to. I think he answers what you were asking. The man is a part of the universe, no matter where he lives. It is his duty to accomplish life-saving unity with it and with future in its entirety. The escape from the universe and nature as its part is excommunication from the human society. It is the locking up of the individual inside the nation. And I think the Gardener speaks a lot about this. I will not go into that. You can read a poem. And yes, and Dušan Pajić wrote very recently that, and he is, and then you can continue with your poem, because this is from Gardiner, so this can be an introduction to what you are trying to say. So in his 1921 article, Dušan Pajić quotes the last poem in the Gardiner, and he refers to the significance of interliterary communication in poem 85, and observes, some readers may be surprised by a combination of creative self-awareness and awareness of the reader / interlocutor in this poem, who stands on the other side of the text and time. According to this, Tagore, as an author, lives on. I think we can end here. Yes. But I have a poem from Gitanjali which actually speaks of the poetic principles of oneness. Can I just a few lines?
Yes.
It's the poem 69. And he writes that the same stream of life, and it answers your question again, I believe. The same stream of life that runs through my veins, night and day, runs through the world and dances in rhythmic measures. It is the same life that shoots in joy through the dust of the earth in numberless blades of grass and breaks into tumultuous waves of leaves and flowers. So let us end here. We can say that, and I would like to believe that Tagore is relevant in Serbia today than at any time in history.
Yes, he is relevant everywhere, forever. Tužne su tvoje pronikljive oči. Ispituju dušu moju kao mesec kada bih hteo da pronikne more. Razgolitio sam svoj život pred očima tvojim od kraja do kraja i ništa nisam sakrio ni zadržao. Zato me ne poznaješ. Da je dragi kamen, mogao bi ga razbiti u 100 zrnaca i nanizati ogrlicu tebi oko vrata. Da je cvet, svež i malen i sladak, otkinuo bi ga sa peteljke i udenuo tebi u kosu. Ali to je srce moje, Dragana, gde su obale njegove, a gde njegovo dno? Ne poznaješ međe tog kraljevstva, a ipak si njegova kraljica. Da je samo trenutak radosti, on bi procvetao u laki osmejak i ti bi ga mogla videti i čitati u trenutku. Da je samo bol, on bi se rastopio u sjajne suze u kojima bi se ogledala njegova najdublja tajna, tajna bez reči. Ali to je ljubav, Dragana moja. Njena je radost i bol bez granica. Beskrajne su njene želje i njeno bogatstvo. Ona ti je bliska kao život, pa ipak je ne možeš nikada potpuno spoznati. Hvala vam. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ukoliko želite, vi možete da ju priđete da je pijete neko pitanje. See, they can come to you and ask you some question if they
Yes,
want.
yes, of course. Yes.
Ukoliko želite da se poslužite, ovdje imate malo neko posluženje. Izvolite, uživajte. Naravno, obavezno pogledajte i zbirku Latinske Amerike. Dakle, ovo je nova izložba. 117 predmeta predkolumbijske umetnosti, starih između 600 i 2800 godina. Iz Perua, starih Inka i naroda pre Inka. Na zidu je i odeća stara oko 1000 godina starih Inka. Hvala što ste došli.
So, namaskar. This is how we say. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you for your patience.